Okay, this is the close reading of Hero Worship from Thomas Carlyle's Past and Present, Book 1, Chapter 6. We're going to do, if you've watched my other videos, something a little bit different today. I think, let me actually just step through it. So I did it in the form of a presentation. We're going to read these 6 pages, and I'll initially get started by providing a page-by-page summary to get the general idea, because I think Carlyle's prose is so sort of complicated and has so many references. And I once asked ChatGPT to give me the longest sentence in this chapter, and it was 69 words. Also surprisingly difficult for ChatGPT to actually parse out the longest sentence, because it was showing me like Carlyle's punctuation is also so unusual. It's not an easy parse for AI software to do, surprisingly. So anyway, but I checked it and double checked it, and it was 69 words, and the second longest was 65 words. So at this point, we're talking like whole paragraphs worth of sentences. So in my previous videos, after I've read through a bunch of sentences and explained a little bit, then the general idea gets lost. So I wanted to start by providing a general summary. And then we're going to do what I've done before, which is read through a section and then pause at appropriate intervals and define some words, show some references, and share my thoughts and opinions. The different thing about this one is that after we've read the first read the section, then the references, words, etc. are going to be all together on another slide. So no more like looking up externally. I've done that work. I've pre-done that work. So we'll just be looking at everything in one place. So hopefully it's going to go smoother, but this is obviously a work in progress. And we're going to be a total of 26 slides in this presentation. So we're on the second slide now. And let's now move on to the general summary. So in terms of summary, you can faintly see the text in the background. So I've taken I've marked off sections and put the gist of that in my own words. So we'll just read through those for the 6 pages now. So Hero Worship starts with Carlyle's acknowledgement that, true, as discussed. So when I say true, I mean like I'm obviously referring to the previous 5 chapters. So the gist of it is that there's a lot of wrong things that are happening, and we need enlightened leadership. So here Carlyle is just echoing that. It's sort of a continuation of the past chapters. Carlyle says, true, we need enlightened leadership. Mere economic relations between people won't sustain our society. Carlyle thinks, not only thinks, but hopefully we all agree that people have souls, and these souls have needs beyond the economic, but the souls are currently being starved, and resuscitating the starving souls will be a difficult but necessary path that we need to go on. Hero worship. Hero worship is the basis and distilled form of all worship. That's a new and interesting thesis by Carlyle. Hero worship is the glue between men. So we're very much getting the sense that in fact, in the next sentence, he's going to say, heroes nourish the soul better than artists and writers and will cure England's dying soul. So that's our way out of this misery, in Carlyle's opinion. He continues, we must cultivate a heroic spirit in us to make a space for heroes to lead us. In other words, we can't be led by wise, heroic men if we ourselves are not wise and heroic. And we very much got that in the last section where with Bobuses electing Bobuses Muses. Or was that this section? I might be referring something actually in this chapter, so never mind about the Bobusismuses. The gist here is that we must cultivate a heroic spirit in us to make space for heroes to lead us. Each individual heroic mind will influence others to cultivate their own, and in a compounding way. So while we start with ourselves, it doesn't end with just ourselves, because our influence on the world will be compounded. We will be able to make more effective demands for wise leadership, because we will easily differentiate good leadership from bad. We will tirelessly demand wise action, and we will get it. So a very it's a stretch to say it's optimistic message, but Carlyle very much asserts that we will finally reach our goals, and in the end, everyone will see it our way. So Carlyle, there was a phrase, I'm not sure if it comes from Carlyle, but one of the readers was referencing a majority of one. So Carlyle very much strikes us as someone who does not follow the crowd. So if the crowd is wrong, he will be the one person on the other side, and he will persuade others to join him in his side. Next page. This is the only way. In the end, we will have a heroic, spirited public that is led by hero kings. Everything else is a temporary step to that. Nothing short of a total immersion into heroic spirit will do. And that's the solution to our Sphinx riddle, our being England's Sphinx riddle in the mid-1800s. I know that warnings, so here I'm taking the tone of Carlyle, obviously. So Carlyle knows that warnings have seldom led to actions, but still, warn I must, as it might influence some to take preventative actions. So while he's optimistic about our end goal, he is very realistic about what it will take to get there in the meantime, and that many may not see it his way. Our North Star and final destination is the cultivation of heroism and leadership by the heroic. And knowing this should infuse all men with a high sense of purpose to row in that direction. Inspiring all men towards wisdom and heroism is an ambitious goal for a writer, but the only one worth writing for. And to inspire heroism and wisdom in men, Carlyle will showcase some past examples. So that's what I would say is the gist of these, going back to the original slide, gist of these 6 pages. And now we're going to go to each one of these pages. We're going to do a short summary again to remind ourselves what's going on that page, and then we will actually read through it and do the references. So here we go with the first page. And to remind ourselves, Carlyle's going to say here, true, we need enlightened leadership. Mere economic relations between our people will not sustain our society. People have souls that have needs beyond the economic, but the souls are being starved. Resuscitating the starving souls will be a difficult but necessary path. And sorry, occasionally I might pause for a sentence or two, and that's where I'm drinking water, so I'll just mute myself. Okay, chapter 6, Hero Worship. To the present editor, not less than to Bobus, a government of the wisest, what Bobus calls an aristocracy of talent, seems the one healing remedy, but he is not so sanguine as Bobus with respect to the means of realizing it. He thinks that we have at once missed realizing it and come to need it so pressingly by departing far from the inner eternal laws and taking up with the temporary outer semblances of laws. He thinks that enlightened egoism, never so luminous, is not the rule by which man's life can be led. That laissez-faire, supply and demand, cash payment for the soul nexus and so forth, were not, are not, and will never be a practicable law of union for a society of men. That poor and rich, that governed and governing, cannot long live together on any such law of union. Alas, he thinks that man has soul in him, different from the stomach in any sense of this word, that if said soul be asphyxied and lie quietly forgotten, the man and his affairs are in a bad way. He thinks that said soul will have to be resuscitated from its asphyxia, that if proved irresuscitable, the man is not long for this world. So let's pause here and go to my references. So I hope you enjoy this. It's a format I just came up with by myself, where I'm just highlighting. The colors have no real meaning other than some, but not the ones here. So I highlighted some pages and I put some references on the sides that I want to address. So to start, I love this I love the little digs that Carlyle makes. So he thinks that enlightened egoism, never so luminous. This just made me chuckle because clearly, like, enlightened egoism or some version of enlightened something else was what Carlyle's opponents, or those that think that economic relations alone will be enough to hold a society together. Clearly, they're referring to themselves as enlightened. And so Carlyle is sort of mocking them by saying, enlightened egoism, never so luminous. Like, I've never seen the light that these supposed enlightened people are thinking that they are emitting. So it's very, very funny little digs like that. Another thing, so clearly Carlyle has a very low opinion of the laissez-faire, supply and demand, cash payment for the soul nexus types of arrangements. And I just wanted to highlight here that I think it's very interesting how Carlyle always, when he wants to emphasize something, introduces many of their synonyms. So laissez-faire and supply and demand might be very similar, or almost equal basically to each other, or cash payment for the soul nexus, another way of referring to the same thing. And he's always showing us that if he rejects an idea, it's not some like minor details in laissez-faire that he's rejecting the whole thing. And so when he wants to reject the whole thing, he always introduces all these synonyms. And we saw them before with also the unveracity and the shams and the semblances and many other chaos, chimera. You know, he definitely, I think he does this both to emphasize his points as well as to show that he's rejecting the totality, the core of a thing, rather than some minor details. I love this, another like 3 times emphasis, were not, are not, and will never be. Very like one or, off or on, very black or white. It's not, again, no gray zones possible in Carlyle's rejection of these philosophies. Another little like just gem, man has soul in him different from the stomach, with a different emphasis. So, I mean, of course, who could argue that men have souls in him? Like, he's almost caricaturing the people that believe in supply and demand by saying these philosophies reduce man to the stomach in different senses of the word, but essentially stomachs. And so he's saying, there's this major part. I mean, who could disagree that men have souls, right? So, and if he's making the case that all these philosophies are just feeding the stomach, then the souls are being completely ignored, and they're being I keep wanting to say asphyxiated because I think that's the way we would say it in the modern language. But the souls are being asphyxiated, so they're being starved of oxygen. And he's saying they are already being starved. So in order for them to be resuscitated, we'll have to resuscitate them, and if they prove irresuscitable, the man is not long for this world. Another way of saying we will perish. So one of those other like very much black and white things that are Carlyle's in Carlyle's opinion, either we'll get to a good place or we'll get to a terrible place where we will all perish. There's no middle ground. I also love this like image of resuscitation. That's why I put the guy whose heart is being resuscitated here. Because when you think of something, to resuscitate something that is dying, on the brink of dying, some extreme measures are needed, right? Like you're not going to make minor changes to somebody's diet or minor interventions to somebody's health in order to literally resuscitate them from the brink. So in a way, Carlyle is verbally preparing us for the enormity of what needs to be done in order to rescue our souls. Okay, sorry for the pause. Now we'll continue. In brief, that Midas-eared mammonism, double-barreled dilettantism, and their 1,000 adjuncts and corollaries are not the law by which God Almighty has appointed this universe to go. That once for all, these are not the law, and then farther, that we shall have to return to what is the law, not by smooth, flowery paths, it is like, and with tremendous cheers in our throat, but over steep, untrodden places, through storm-clad chasms, waste oceans, and the bosom of tornadoes. Thank heaven, if not through weary chaos and the abyss. The resuscitating of a soul that has gone to asphyxia is no momentary or pleasant process, but a long and terrible one. So, as Carlyle has prepared us with this image of resuscitation, he is confirming here it will not be a flowery path with some cheers. It's going to be through storm-clad chasms, waste oceans, if not through literally chaos and abyss. It will be a long and terrible road, not a short and pleasant road. So, one of the places, the images that I had in my head when reading through this part, where he says, the ways we've been going, our mammonism, dilettantism, the double-barreled aristocracy, which you referred to previously, all these superficial things that are present in England today, they are not the law of God, and they are not what he has appointed in this universe to go. Not the law, and we have to return to what is the law. So he is once again doing this total rejection of everything that he's mentioned so far. The Midas focus, the mammonism, the double-barrel, dilettantism, their 1,000 adjuncts and corollaries. Again, this is not like a critique, a subtle critique about a minor point of what's going on in society. It's a complete rejection. This is why I put the image here, a complete rebuke against the whole of it. And in terms of the difficult path we need to go on as a society, in Carlyle's point of view, I had the image of like walking over burning coal. I think this is like a practice that some monks make, but just as an image of like how difficult it's going to be in terms of the next steps for us. All right. Now I will go on to the next page. So this next page, we'll first summarize it. He says, hero worship is the basis and distilled form of all worship. Hero worship is the glue between men. the one that we've been looking for, the one that the cash nexus, mere economics does not fill. He says, heroes nourish the soul better than artists and writers and will cure England's dying soul. We must cultivate a heroic spirit in us to make space for heroes to lead us. So, I'll get started reading. To the present editor, which is Carlyle. Carlyle is the present editor. Hero worship, as he has elsewhere named it, means much more than an elected parliament or stated aristocracy of the wisest, for in his dialect it is the summary, ultimate essence, and supreme practical perfection of all manner of worship, and true worships and noblesses whatsoever. Such blessed parliament, and were it once in perfection, blessed aristocracy of the wisest, God-honored and man-honored, he does look for, more and more perfected as the topmost blessed practical apex of a whole world reformed from sham worship, informed anew with worship, with truth and blessedness. He thinks that hero worship, done differently in every different epoch of the world, is the soul of all social business among men. Sorry. I'm not, sorry, I don't understand why it got resized here. Okay. Where was I? He thinks that hero worship, done differently in every different epoch of the world, is the soul of all social business among men, that the doing of it well, or the doing of it ill, measures accurately what degree of well-being and of ill-being or of ill-being there is in the world's affairs. He thinks that we, on the whole, do our hero worship worse than any nation in this world ever did before, that the Burns and Exciseman, the Byron a literary lion, are, intrinsically, all things considered, a baser and falser phenomenon than the Odin a god, the Muhammad a prophet of God. It is this editor's clear opinion, accordingly, that we must learn to do our hero worship better, that to do it better and better means the awakening of the nation's soul from its asphyxia and the return of blessed life to us, heaven's blessed life, not Mammon's galvanic cursed one. To resuscitate the asphyxiated, apparently now moribund, in the last agony, if not resuscitated, such and no other seems the consummation. Okay. So let's read through the first parts, or do some references to the first parts. So Carlyle says hero worship means much more than just the parliament or an aristocracy of the wisest. There's just much more that he's trying to get at by the term hero worship. He's saying worshiping the correct heroes, or worshiping heroes in general, is the pinnacle of the the distilled form of all worship. And I'm sort of, the image that I have in my mind as I think through this is that of the peak of a mountain. So a good parliament, blessed aristocracy and stuff, these are these are sort of the way as a person is climbing towards the peak of the mountain, the steps one might take. So and he's going to say in a little bit like the peak of the mountain is something like worshiping the right God, worshiping the right prophet of God, and the worship of something less than that. So parliaments, aristocracies, and will see the excitement and literary line. Those are baser and falser phenomena compared to the pinnacle. Whenever I put this purple rectangles and I put these specific emojis, I wanted to reference something that the sentences that affected me and I want to ponder over more. So I'll read those again. He thinks that hero worship done differently in every different epoch of the world is the soul of all social business among men, and the doing of it well or the doing of it ill measures accurately what degree of well-being or ill-being there is in the world's affairs. So this is interesting for a couple of reasons. Carlyle thinks that, first of all, the social glue among men that obviously, as he argued before, cannot be filled by economics, it is the hero worship, it is the worship that, if I'm to expand on Carlyle a little bit, of the of worshiping the correct hero in a correct way. So, for example, previously, or as he's going to say here as well, mammonism. So the mammonism, this is the image that you get, which is like a man clinging to his money. So in other words, materialism, I think, is something is a modern word we can substitute for mammonism. So you cannot worship money and not end up like mammon. So there's hero worship is something that you can do ill or you can do well. It is not like to each man his hero, and we don't have any general opinion about it. No, like you can worship the correct hero in the correct way or a bad hero in a bad way. And clearly mammonisms and the worship of material things, in Carlyle's opinion, is not just opinion, but judgment. What he thinks is objectively is leading us to ruin. So I just thought this sentence. Another interesting thing is that the temporal ecumenism shown by Carlyle, where he says it's done differently, the hero worship is done differently in every epoch. Differently in every different epoch. So across time and across places, people have have worshipped different heroes, but he's still, by saying the well and the ill, he's saying that there is a way to judge all of them and whether they were well or ill, despite all the different locations and different times that they were in. So very much Carlyle, I think, reminds me of like a perennial traditionalist in that he's going to use the same yardstick for today as for tomorrow, as for yesterday. It doesn't change just because the location of the earth has changed or the time period has changed. He thinks that so here, obviously still continuing to refer to himself, so the present editor, in other words, Carlyle, thinks that our hero worship, so England's hero worship, is worse than any other nation in this world ever did before. That is a big judgment to cast on England in the mid-1850s. I mean, Carlyle is a historian, so he has a good perspective of the heroes that have been worshipped across time and in different places, and he's just really saying ours is the worst. And then this part was very interesting, as I mentioned before, like our greats, he's saying, are, so now let me define the references a little bit. Burns is this guy on the left, refers to Robert Burns, the famous 18th century Scottish poet who worked as a government exciseman, a tax officer who collected duties on goods like alcohol. Byron refers to Lord Byron, celebrated early 19th century English poet, known as a flamboyant literary lion, meaning a famous and socially admired writer. So Carlyle is going to say the people that we hold in high esteem today in England are worse and false than the pagan gods or Muslim prophets. Those are, he's clearly showing references in this time, like in the mid 1800s. England is thoroughly Christian. So he's making references to England in the past with Odin, or to another civilization altogether with Muhammad being the prophet of God of from Muslim point of view. So he's saying the ones in the past, this is like emphasizing that we've done it worse than any nation. We've done it worse than us in the past, and we've done it worse than the complete aliens to our culture are doing right now. So, yeah, the complete, some emojis I hope are giving some lightheartedness. I'm even chuckling at them. I put these here like 2 days ago. But basically, this is a total rejection of Mammon's galvanic, accursed worship. So again, when you search for some images, you see a man, but just pathetically on top of his chest, clutching coins. Like, this is a very a soul that is doing hero worship badly. And again, we see the emphasis of the language by Carlyle. He's like, when I see Carlyle, when I read Carlyle, I get this image of a man that is running around in a circle so fast that he actually creates a thunderstorm. And so this is like a literary thunderstorm to resuscitate the asphyxiated, apparently now moribund, in the last agony, if not resuscitated. There's no other way. Such and no other seems the consummation. So, like, the different ways in which he's saying death is coming unless we take this path. What path? The path of better hero worship. Hero worship, if you will. Yes, friends. But first of all, by being ourselves of heroic mind. A whole world of heroes, a world not of flunkies, where no hero king can reign. That is what we aim at. We, for our share, will put away all flunkyism, baseness, unveracity. See the 3 emphasis again? Flunkyism, baseness, unveracity from us. We shall then hope to have noblesses and veracity set over us. Never till then. Let Bobus and company sneer. That is your reform? Yes, Bobus, that is our reform. And except in that, and what will follow out of that, we have no hope at all. So, I think, I didn't quite emphasize this here, but as I mentioned, flunkyism, baseness, unveracity, again, like with the synonyms and the total rejection of them. The interesting thing is, he said, we will put away all of these, and we shall then hope to have noblesses and veracities set over us. It's interesting who is doing the action and who is being the passive one here. He's saying it's our responsibility to drive away these the base instincts and the fakenesses that we are engaging in. And once we do that, we will be bestowed with noblesses and veracities. Noblesse and veracity, that is not quite something that you do, but that is given to you. It is granted to you. You can hope to have it, right? But in order to receive this gift of noblesse and veracity, to even have a hope of receiving it, you need to actively put away the flunkyism, the servile attitude, the baseness, the veracities. So it's interesting, I think Carlyle is saying we have a responsibility to purify ourselves. And after we have purified ourselves, we may get the noblesse and veracity that we may be sent. So this is very much a us and the universe, us and God kind of process. It is not a one-person process or one-sided process. Let Bobus and company sneer. Carlyle is clearly saying, so Bobus, as we know, is sausage maker on the great scale. He is, it's important that the people that are going to be sneering at us throughout this process are not mere laymen. Bobus is influential. He is wealthy. He is successful. But even the wealthy and successful will not understand what we're doing. Carlyle is saying, for at least for a while. Later he's going to say they will all be persuaded in the end. But initially, they will not see what the purpose of this reform of our flunkyism and getting rid of baseness and unveracity will accomplish. And again, the black and white worldview of Carlyle, where we have no hope at all unless we do this. So, clearly very opinionated. Now, in the third page, I'll do a quick summary again. Each individual heroic mind will influence others to cultivate their own in a compounding way. We will be able to make more effective demands for wise leadership because we will easily differentiate good from bad, good leadership from bad, and we will tirelessly demand wise actions until we get it, and we will get it. In the end, everyone will see it our way. So, this page is going to show, make the case for, as Carlyle said, we need heroism. That's the only, hero worship is the only thing that will sustain our souls, starving souls. And to get heroism, we will each individually act in a heroic way. And in this page, Carlyle explains how each of us individually acting in a heroic way will get, in the end, will lead to success. The mechanism of what that will entail. Reform, like charity, O Bobus, must begin at home. Once well at home, how it will radiate outwards, irrepressible into all that we touch and handle, speak and work, kindling ever new light by incalculable contagion, spreading in geometric ratio far and wide, doing good only wheresoever it spreads, not evil. By reform bills, anti-corn law bills, and 1,000 other bills and methods, we will demand of our governors with emphasis, and for the first time not without effect, that they cease to be quacks, or else depart, that they set no quackeries and blockheadisms anywhere to rule over us, and that they utter or act no cant on us. It will be better if they do not. I think this was the longest sentence, by the way, with the 69 words. For we shall now know quacks when we see them, cant when we hear it shall be horrible to us. We will say with the poor Frenchman at the bar of convention, though in wiser style than he, for the space, and not of an hour, but of a lifetime. I'm not going to pretend to read French, but the translation is, arrestment of the knaves and dastards. We know what a work that is, how long it will be before they are all or mostly got arrested. But here is one. Arrest him in God's name, it is one fewer. We will, in all practicable ways, by word and silence, by act and refusal to act, energetically demand that arrestment. Again, a French sentence, I don't know. And by degrees, infallibly attain it. So far to go to my commentary, Carlyle is saying, addressing Bobus, so addressing the wealthy but skeptic people, that cultivating a heroic mind will get us where we need. He's saying, reform, like charity, Bobus, must begin at home, and it will radiate outwards. We very much get the sense of a ripple effect, like it starts with one, and it will just radiate from each center point of one. I love this phrase. I didn't mark it here, but I loved it. The incalculable contagion. How one single person becoming heroic will affect the others around him. That is an incalculable contagion, in Carlyle's opinion. It is contagion, it is contagious, but we don't really know the mechanism, but it does happen. And I love this, or I wanted to show something about this spreading in a geometric ratio. Geometric ratio is like where, I think it's a sequence where you multiply each next, to get the next part of the sequence, you multiply the previous two numbers. So if it's like 1 and 2, that will become 2. Then it will become 2 times 2, which will become 4, etc. So we're talking about a compounding effect, essentially. And I just wanted to highlight that Carlyle, well, there are two things interesting in that. So number one, the ripple effects are not linear, right? So it's not like a person who cultivates a heroic spirit, though that will radiate outwards by one person at a time, or linearly by just the number of people he meets. The incalculable contagion will be a geometric effect. It will have a compounding effect. One person can affect many, so a person can punch far above his weight, in Carlyle's opinion, when they cultivate a heroic spirit in terms of influencing society. And the other thing is, when Carlyle says geometric ratio, I just wanted to point out, Carlyle does not, for Carlyle, that is not like a mere literary term. So Carlyle is a true Renaissance man. He's both a historian and clearly a very accomplished literary writer and a sort of polemicist. But also, there's a thing called Carlyle Circle. Like, he solved some important thing in math in the 1850s. And therefore, he's an accomplished engineer and mathematician as well. Just a true Renaissance man. So I just wanted to point this out by, when he says geometric ratio, he understands the implication of what he's saying. Also, when Carlyle is rejecting in previous chapters all the economists and political economists and the Chartisms, it's not because they're too technical. It's not because the quantification, the sort of attempting to rule by technocracy goes above his head. Far from it. He's very accomplished, and he's able to see further than many others in his time the limitations of the technocratic processes that are attempting to be enacted. And Carlyle also says, we will demand of our governors, with emphasis, and for the first time not without effects. So Carlyle very much understands all these bills and methods and stuff. They've been tried before in the past, but it lacked a certain heroic spirit before, and therefore, in Carlyle's opinion, it was ineffectual. Whereas when we make our demands and when we start acting from a point of heroic spirit, we will be effective, he's saying. So he's almost like nipping a potential criticism of Bobus in the bud by saying, I understand some things haven't worked in the past. I'm telling you the difference is the heroic spirit, and I'm putting it very clearly that this time it will work. And then we get a beautiful sort of tirade of the totality of a point when Carlyle makes it, so that they cease, like the strong language, it's ceasing is an abrupt end. Cease to be quacks or else depart. Again, an abrupt thing, to depart. They said no quackeries or blockheadisms anywhere to rule over us, that they utter or act no cant to us. Just, the rejection is so total. I almost feel like it's a lawyer writing in like a very complicated agreement of some sort, that they're trying to leave no loopholes at all. Like the way lawyers write when they don't want to leave anything, any possible way of rejecting a certain thing that they're agreeing on. They say the same thing in 1,000 words and anywhere and no can't and depart. Just very, very strong language by Carlyle. And again, he says, for we shall now know quacks when we see them. So he's saying, why is this, things we've tried before didn't work in the past, but they will work with the heroic spirit, because now we will know quacks when we see them. In other words, we will not be misled when we cultivate the heroic spirit in us. Kant, so again, as we had discussed before, it's sham speech, it is deceptive speech. Kant, when we hear it, shall be horrible to us, implying that without the heroic spirit, we don't really know quacks when we see them. We can be misled, and we can be misled by speech as well. We are dupable when we don't have a heroic spirit in us. And because we were dupable, we have been misled, and the stuff we've tried in the past didn't work. So very succinct, I think, very clear way of putting his point across of what the ramifications of a heroic spirit. Then I was like, then suddenly we switched to this poor Frenchman at the bar of convention. So I was like, what is this talking about? So let me define. The bar of convention refers to the spot before the French Revolutionary Convention, the revolutionary government of France in the 1790s, where accused persons or petitioners stood to speak or be judged. Carlyle is referring to an actual scene from the French Revolution when someone, the poor Frenchman, stood at that bar to plead or defend himself before the Revolutionary Assembly. So, Carlyle is saying here, we will demand, in other words, we will demand, I'm actually, now that I think about it, not totally sure why, I was going to say why Carlyle is putting, for a second, now I understand. For a second, I thought the French Revolution, he was speaking of it in a good way, but he's actually saying we will stand with the poor Frenchman. So he's talking, because clearly Carlyle is no fan of the French Revolution. He's thinking that this is another devolutionary step on the way to the materialism and the dilettantism of the day. So Carlyle is saying we will stand with the poor man. So the guy who's trying to defend himself against the French revolutionaries, we will stand with him. And he's saying we will, in wiser style than he, and not for an hour, but forever, we will demand the arrestment of the knaves and dastards. Dastard means a dishonorable or despicable man. And we will, so Carlyle is saying we will make these demands, and we will infallibly attain it. Meaning the guy who is on the chopping block by the French revolutionaries, we identify with him, and we will infallibly win in the end. So Carlyle saying, we will, since we're, the quacks will be so horrible to us, and Kant, when we hear it, shall be horrible to us. The existence of one knave and bastard will be too much for us, and we will demand that, even though it's one, and even though there are many more out there, we will make our demand that this bad influence will be arrested. And then we get another complete lawyerly phrase of the totality of our action. He's saying we will, in all practicable ways, by word, by silence, by act, by refusal to act, energetically demand that arrestment. So, even though we're in the minority, as the poor Frenchman at the bar of convention is in the minority, our energy will be so high, and our everything that we do will be so purposeful. So, in all ways, both our words will be purposeful and our silences will be purposeful. Both our actions and refusals to act will be purposeful, until we purge the dishonorable, despicable ones out of our society infallibly. We will get there. I did think Um, I did think here that Carlyle is saying this is a very this is the most optimistic part of his message, where he shows no cynicism. He's not daunted by being by identifying with a poor Frenchman against all of the powers of the day, because he's saying we will be so filled with the heroic spirit that we'll be compelled to action, compelled to act in the most effective ways, such that we'll infallibly get it. Which also implies that everyone who's on the other side, despite the fact that they have the power, they're not as purposeful as we are. And our singular focus will attain it. It's sort of like a laser. You can point it at the sky and it will travel for miles and miles, but like a more dispersed kind of light will not be seen that far away. So we will have a laser focus which will make our efforts go so much farther than a dispersed light, dispersed focus, even if it's stronger by the numbers. Reading on. Infallibly, for light spreads, all human souls never so be darkened, love light. Light once kindled spreads, till all is luminous, till the cry, arrest your knaves and dastards, rises imperative from millions of hearts, and rings and reigns from sea to sea. Nay, how many of them may we not arrest with our own hands, even now? We. Do not countenance them, thou there. Turn away from their lacquered sumptuosities, their belauded sophistries, their serpent gratiosities, their spoken and acted cant, with a sacred horror, and apogee satanas. Bobus and company, and all men, will gradually join us. We demand arrestment of the knaves and dastards, and begin by arresting our own poor selves out of that fraternity. There is no other reform conceivable. We'll stop there and we'll read later. I mean, this is once again one of the Carlyle passages where you want epic film music to be composed, inspired by this. A couple of interesting things. So he's saying, we will demand the dishonor to be purged from our society. We might even purge it ourselves, like many of them not arrest with our own hands. And then he's now speaking directly to his reader. Carlyle is saying, do not countenance them, thou there. You, I'm speaking to you. Do not for a second think that our enemies, do not be tricked by our enemies, he's saying. So, actually, I'm sorry, we started over here. So let me go a little bit before. Once again, we're following upon an emphasis of how total our actions will be to infallibly attain our goals. And then the ripple effect. Now he's like painting a picture of the ripple effect, of the end result of our ripple effect, which is that initially we'll start alone by demanding more honorable and despicable society, by the purging of the dishonorable and despicable, but eventually we'll get to the point where our cry rises imperative from millions of hearts, rings and reigns from sea to sea. Everywhere, every person, millions of them, will be persuaded by our action, which is currently you and me. It's currently Carlyle and the reader. But he's definitely saying we will reach everyone in the end. If we stay on our path, if our belief and the cultivation of our heroic spirit is completely total. So he's saying, do not countenance them, thou there, the fakenesses of the world. Turn away from their lacquered sumptuosities. So lacquer is the thing, the shiny protective coat that we put on furniture and stuff. So they're They might seem shiny with their excessive spending habits. They might be praised, and they might have a lot of words, a lot of deceptive words, sophistries. They're like serpent graciosities. Graciosity means graciousness, except in a duplicitous way. That's why I put the masks over here. They're spoken and acted can't. So very much, I put this image over here because it reminds me of a crescendo. And again, a total rejection. He's saying, he's describing all of the fakenesses of the world. And then he's saying, reject them with a sacred horror, with an apogee satanis. I was so surprised to see this. Apogee satanis is this like when a priest holds a cross and rebukes, says, I rebuke thee. That is like the rejection of Satan. And Carlyle, I was surprised to see this because in the previous page, Carlyle's words naturally reminded me of that kind of an image. So here he is directly making a reference to that image. And the crescendo, the language has just such crescendo. They're lacquered sumptuosity, they're belauded sophistry, serpent graciosity, spoken and acted can't. Like describing a whole universe before he takes it down by saying, rejected with sacred horror, with a rebuke the whole of it. And then I put these emojis and the purple rectangle because this is a sentence that I just need to meditate upon. It's so fascinating, and it was striking to me when I read it. He said, we demand arrestment of the knaves and dastards and begin by arresting our own poor selves out of that fraternity. The idea that you arrest yourself out of a fraternity and that is the first step of purging society of the dishonorable and the despicable. It's just so interesting because arrest implies that there is an inclination. Obviously, you arrest someone against their will. So it means he's acknowledging here that there is a part of you that is going to want to continue engaging with the knaves and the dastards, with the dishonorable and despicable. And even when he describes everything that we must reject, you can kind of tell there's a lot of good there. Like there will be shine, there will be money, there will be praise, there will be graciosities, there will be spoken and acted can't. There's a lot to be seduced by here. And Carlyle is saying the part of us that is seduced by that must be arrested out of that fraternity by the part of us that recognizes the eternal truths. So interesting. He's definitely referring to like an internal struggle here with arresting yourself out of a specific fraternity. There's no other reform conceivable. We'll go back to read this sentence and then go on to the next page. Thou and I, my friend, can, in the most flunky world, make each of us one non-flunky, one hero, if you like. That will be two heroes to begin with. Courage, even that is a whole world of heroes to end with, or what we poor two can do in furtherance thereof. So, 1 second. So Carlyle is saying, it'll begin with us, you and me, reader and writer, editor, but a whole world of heroes is what we'll end up with, or we'll at least make steps towards. So if I were to summarize this page, Carlyle is saying this is the only way. In the end, we'll have a heroic spirited public that is led by hero kings, and everything else is a temporary step to that. Nothing short of a total immersion into a heroic spirit will do. That is the solution to our Sphinx riddle. And I know, or Carlyle knows, that warnings have seldom led to actions, but still he must warn, as it might influence some to take preventative actions. Yes. So we read this part. So once again, Carlyle is saying, in a terrible world with all the fakenesses and all the serpent graciosities, initially it will be us too. And with that, we will take steps towards a whole world of heroes. Yes, friends, hero kings and a whole world not unheroic, there lies the port and happy haven towards which, through all these storm-tossed seas, French revolutions, Chartisms, Manchester insurrections that make the heart sick in these bad days, the supreme powers are driving us. On the whole, blessed be the supreme powers, stern as they are. Towards that haven will we, O friends, let all true men, with what faculty is in them, bend valiantly, incessantly, with 1,000-fold endeavor, thither. There, or else in the ocean abysses, it is very clear to me we shall arrive. Well, here truly is no answer to the Sphinx question, not to the answer a disconsolate public inquiring at the College of Health was in hopes of. A total change of regimen, change of constitution and existence from the very center of it. A new body to be got with resuscitated soul, not without convulsive travail throes, as all birth and new birth presupposes travail. This is sad news to a disconsolate, discerning public, hoping to have got off by some Morrison's pill, some St. John's corrosive mixture, and perhaps a little blistery friction on the back. We were prepared to part with our corn law, with various laws and unlaws, but this? What is this? Nor has the editor forgotten how it fares with your ill-boding Cassandras and sieges of Troy. Imminent in perdition is not usually... this is a great sentence, I must restart. Imminent perdition is not usually driven away by words of warning. Didactic destiny has other methods in store, or these would fail always. Such words should, nevertheless, be uttered when they dwell truly in the soul of any man. Words are hard, are importunate, but how much harder the importunate events they foreshadow. Here and there a human soul may listen to the words, who knows how many human souls. So, to start analyzing this, we start with our continuation from the previous page where Carlyle says, each of us one non-flunky, one hero, and then will be two heroes, you and me, the reader and me. And in a flunky world, it's just going to be the two of us, but we'll finally end up with a whole world of heroes. That step begins here. We very much get a David and Goliath picture where, it'll be the two of us against all the others in the world, but we will win in the end. Again, with the Carlyle's black and white point of view, which is like either to this world of heroes, we will arrive, or we'll be in the ocean abysses. Either that or that. There's no middle ground, no mid-level destination that we can get to. And Carlyle is saying everything else is temporary towards our final destination, which is one of these two. So the revolution, Chartism, insurrection, those are all temporary steps to our final destination, which is a total resuscitation of the soul and the heroic, or totally perishing, ending up in ocean abysses. And Carlyle is saying when we march towards what he believes will end up, even though through hard times, is the kingdom of heroes, we will be, and then we get a Carlyle storm, valiant, incessant, thousandfold endeavor, thither, there. So very, Carlyle is saying, even though we are David in a world of Goliath, we must be very resolute in our actions, very valiant, incessant. It's almost like the image of you get the heroic spirit we must display is like the kind of fervor as if we're almost about to get it, as if it's like 5 minutes before accomplishing our goal. We must be that energetic and enthusiastic, despite the fact that accomplishing our goal is a long ways away. So Carlyle is acknowledging, or a little bit mocking, like, when the public wanted our Sphinx question answered, when they were looking around for solutions, they were hoping for a Morrison's pill. This St. John's corrosive mixture is referring to this man, Henry St. John, the Viscount Bolingbroke, an 18th century politician and writer whose skeptical, anti-clerical writings Carlyle saw as corrosive influence that is intellectually destructive to faith, sincerity, and moral conviction. Bolingbroke's rationalist philosophy acted like an acid, eating away at spiritual belief in his readers. So Carlyle is saying, you wanted a quick fix, you wanted a little bit of rationalist philosophy, and perhaps a blistery friction on the back, like the difficult road you thought you were going to go through as England is just a couple of blisters. And instead, Carlyle is saying, that's not what you'll get. You will get a total change of regimen, change of constitution, new body, resuscitated soul. Like he is saying, you will not get to your destination through small fixes. And he's very aware that that's not what people wanted to hear. Disconsolate means very unhappy, unable to be comforted. And travail means painful or laborious effort. And he's interesting. He's like, he's analogizing what England needs to go through to that of a birth. So he's saying it will be painful and laborious, but just like labor, there will be a baby at the end. So there will be a kingdom of heroes in the end. So all of the trouble is going to be worth it, but it's not going to be simple trouble. It's going to be the biggest pain you ever experienced in your life. Sorry, my voice is running out, but we still have some ways to go. So, Carlyle here is saying imminent perdition is not usually driven away by words of warning. This is like you get the sense of Carlyle a little bit reflecting on himself and the craft that he's doing, which is writing, right? He's saying, I also know that usually these like difficult roads and terrible destinies are not warnings of such are rarely effective in the present to change behavior in the present. Which, then he's going to say, okay, but that's all we can do because the events that we're foreshadowing are even worse than the words that are hard. And who knows how many human souls I will touch with my writing. And I just thought, like, is it a little bit of cope? Like, is Carlyle trying to appease his own pessimism, or dare I say realism, in the end? In one sense, of course, Carlyle's words have survived centuries at this point. I am making a YouTube channel where I deeply read and analyze and think about Carlyle's words. So it is true. Like, who's to know how many souls his words will touch, even centuries later? But on the other hand, you can just tell, like, there's a part in Carlyle that is saying, why are you even doing this? Nobody's going to understand you. You'll be like Cassandra screaming into the void. And Carlyle is trying to have his heroic spirit persuade himself that what he's doing will further the goal of reaching the heroic world in the end. Just very interesting to see kind of a high-level battle between Carlyle and Carlyle here. So I'll read the last part again, and then we'll continue to the next page. Here and there a human soul may listen to the words, who knows how many human souls, whereby the importunate events, if not diverted and prevented, will be rendered less hard. The present editor's purpose is to himself full of hope. By the way, importunate means persistent, especially to the point of annoyance. And to give us a summary of this page, it means our North Star and final destination is the cultivation of heroism and leadership by the heroic. Knowing this should infuse all men with a high sense of purpose to row in that direction. Inspiring all men towards wisdom and heroism is an ambitious goal for a writer, but the only one worth writing for. Carlyle is saying, for through fierce travails, through wide seas and roaring gulfs, though wide seas and roaring gulfs lie between us, is it not something if a lodestar in the eternal sky do once more disclose itself, an everlasting light shining through all cloud tempests and roaring billows, ever as we emerge from the trough of the sea, the blessed beacon far off on the edge of far horizons towards which we are to steer incessantly for life? Is it not something, O heavens, is it not at all? Is it not all? There lies the heroic promised land. Under that heaven's light, my brethren, bloom the happy isles. There, oh there, thither will we. There dwells the great Achilles whom we knew. There dwell all heroes, and will dwell, thither all ye heroic-minded. The heaven's lodestar once clearly in our eye, how will each true man stand truly to his work in the ship? How, with undying hope, with all things be confronted and all to be conquered? Nay, with the ship's prow once turned in that direction, is not all, as it were, already well? Sick, wasting misery has become noble, manful effort with a goal in our eye. The choking nightmare chokes us no longer, for we stir under it. The nightmare has already fled. Certainly, could the present editor instruct men how to know wisdom, heroism when they see it, that they might do reverence to it only, and loyally make it rule over them? Yes, he were the living epitome of all editors, teachers, prophets that now teach and prophesy. He were an Apollo Morrison, a Trismegistus, an effective Cassandra. Let no able editor hope such things. It is to be expected the present laws of copyright, rate of reward per sheet, and other considerations will save him from that peril. Let no editor hope of such things, no, and yet let all editor aim towards such things. I mean, just amazing. So, one thing that I must reflect on, I've obviously read and worked through this chapter, and yet I find it somewhat difficult to read through it. Carlyle is a writer that demands attention. Even if I have read and analyzed and thought about these passages before, it's just not easy in the moment to quite recall where this long sentence is going, where the joke will be, what the twist or turn will be. He is an unpredictable writer, even if you have done the work before, even if it's familiar to you before. It is interesting to be able to, that's why I think my reading is a little bit choppy too, because I can't quite predict where everything is going to go. And therefore, I have a hard time putting the emphasis on the right places. But it is interesting how, unique that is in our modern world. I mean, most of the writing that I read is so formulaic, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because our minds are demanding a certain kind of format to be able to digest the content more easily. But Carlyle is refusing it. He's very, he has his own path, and you'll walk through the path, and as you walk through it, you must be present to even perceive it. Otherwise, it's very easy to feel like a bunch of words are flying at you at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it's difficult to discern the meaning from them. So very interesting, Carlyle's language. Okay. So to analyze the sentence, the page that we just read, Carlyle is continuing over here saying, I'm saying all this, I'm writing all this in the hopes that to influence men, even though I know that the people that have warnings, those warnings are rarely heeded in the present, as with the eternal story of Cassandra. And now we see this sentence by Carlyle, which is very interesting. This is like we're continuing Carlyle against Carlyle. So he's saying, I know I'm realistic enough to know that my words may not really reach that many, and yet is it not something of a lodestar? Lodestar meaning a star that is used to guide the course of a ship, especially the pole star. So is it not something that there is a north sky, a blessed beacon that shows us where to go? The fact that we must go there, and it is the North Star, it will be an ever-present direction in our lives. Is that not something? And he repeats the question, is it not something, oh heavens? He's not even asking himself, he's almost asking for the hope, the assistance of the divine in cultivating some hope in him. He's saying, is it not something, oh heavens? Is it not at all? Is it not all? There lies the heroic promised land. The fact that there is a North Star, that we know it's the only way, that we must get there, even though it's far away, throughout the eternal sky, it's far, far away. Is it not something that we at least know where we're going? He's also saying, now this is the part where I really thought, is Carlyle being a little bit insecure? Is it almost like Carlyle knows the pessimist in him is just so much more overpowering? He's starting to say, with the heavens lodestar once clearly in our eye, how will each true man stand truly to his work in the ship? By the way, to define a couple of words here, billow is large undulated mass of something, typically cloud, smoke, or stream. So he's saying the beacon is, we can see it among the roaring billows. And then he's saying, so once we know where we're going, once we clearly know where we're going, will not each man stand truly to his work in the ship? Will each man not start taking steps towards the heroic once they know the heroic is where we need to get to? And I just feel this Carlyle's you look at this man. I think that's why I put I put his portrait here. Does this man look? And everything we read so far, does this look like the kind of man that believes that people will start of their own accord with the goal in mind, start doing honorable things en masse? It's just so interesting how he's trying to remain hopeful while his realism and pessimism kicks in, and you can really see those in these pages. Then he says these purple, the sentences I've highlighted in the purple, that just struck me in a deep way. So I'll read them and then I'll tell you why it struck me in a deep way. He says, "Nay, with all the ship's prow once turned," prow means the pointed front part of a ship, the bow. So, "with the ship's prow once turned in that direction, is not all as it were already well? The choking nightmare chokes us no longer, for we stir under it. The nightmare has already fled." Now, this is very interesting. This is if anything, this is the optimistic part of Carlyle, roaring back against his pessimism and realism. And it just made me stop in my tracks. Because Carlyle is essentially saying, if we are directionally correct, is our goal basically not as good as done, as good as accomplished? So, this is the kind of spirit that I also think celebrates small wins. I think this is the one that is in the purple, the two sentences in the purple here. I think this is the spirit that everyone who goes on a long path, a long, arduous path, must cultivate within themselves. Just like the having a heroic spirit across England is a long and arduous path. It reminds me of the sentence like, a marathon begins, or a walk of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So this is the part that says, well, once you've started taking a step and are putting the next step in front of the other step, do you really need to think of 1,000 miles anymore? Right? Like, in the fullness of time, as long as you keep putting one step in front of the other, you will get to 1,000 miles. There's no other way. So, as long as you're directionally correct and in motion and taking steps, in some sense, like, nothing needs to be daunting anymore. 1,000 miles don't need to be daunting anymore. It's just such a radical perspective, that's radical and also true, and also echoed in many, many other peoples that have accomplished big things. I love the second sentence, "The choking nightmare chokes us no longer. For we stir under it, the nightmare has already fled." What is the choking nightmare? What is choking you? What is choking you is the inertia, it is the fear, it is, in some sense, the despair, the potential futility, the fear that you need to walk 1,000 miles. And yet, none of that is not, the nightmare is still present, but it's no longer choking you when you take steps against it, when you stir. When you start acting, even if it's the first couple of steps, even if it is just Carlyle and his reader, one reader, two souls, even if it's just them, the nightmare has already fled. In some sense, all you have is the vestiges of the nightmare in reality once you started acting against it. It's just so, like, talk about things that you can write and nail to your wall. This is it. This really is it. I love these two sentences. Then Carlyle, after saying these two, like, just incredible, mind-blowing sentences, goes to, has a little bit of fun with himself. I mean, seriously, this is like Carlyle against Carlyle for a while. So he's saying, well, he's gonna, after these incredibly wonderful, optimistic, I think, sentences, he's gonna take it to a cartoonish degree. He's gonna say, well, certainly, could the present editor, could I, like, teach every man to recognize wisdom and heroism when they see it? Dare I say I will be like a teacher, a prophet that's going to be teaching and prophesying, and Apollo here refers to the Greek god of light, healing, and the arts and wisdom and enlightenment. And then Trismegistus refers to Hermes Trismegistus, legendary sage of ancient mystical wisdom. So he's saying, will the present editor be like an Apollo Morrison, Trismegistus, an effective Cassandra? Effective Cassandra? Like Cassandra, the ancient Greeks and could not do it, but I will do it, could I do it? I mean, you can tell like this optimism is well and good, but it is crashing on the shores of realism. He's saying, let no able editor hope such things. Immediately crashing that down. Don't get too excited. Even though you've taken a couple of steps and the 1,000 miles are no longer making you afraid or anxious, that does not mean you will become an effective Cassandra. That does not mean the road is done. So let you not hope such things. Let you not cultivate the sort of delusions of grandeur as an editor. No able editor, not himself and no other writers. Be realistic and don't think that by writing you will change society at once or they will listen to you. And yet, he's saying, let no editor hope such things. No. And yet, let all editors aim towards such things. Just so interesting. He's talking in terms of editors and teachers and prophets, but the image that I get, the modern, I think maybe Chesterton might have referred to this, but it's definitely a modern reference as well. He's saying, be a happy warrior. Like, even though you're the underdog, and even though you won't see the destination for a long, long time, there's no anxiety anymore. You won't be choked anymore by the road ahead. And be realistic. You won't have results either, none that you can see, not for a long time. But you must kill. It's almost like an argument against hope. I'm just kind of realizing this as I think back on it and reflect on it, but it's saying your hope, to the extent that there's no hope, you don't need hope and you shouldn't have hope, because hope implies that there's an uncertainty to where you'll get to. But he's saying if your ship's prow is turned in the right direction, if you give it time, as long as it remains in that direction, turned in that direction, you will get there. In some sense, you're already there, right? In some sense, the light will drive out all the darkness because you're stirring under it and it has already fled. So kill this like desperate part of you that needs to see results, because you won't see them. You will not be an Apollo Morrison, a Trismegistus, an effective Cassandra. You will not see the results of your actions in this lifetime. Therefore, don't hope of such things. So, interestingly, without hope, why would you remain making those efforts? Why would let all editors aim towards such things? Because it is the aim itself, it is the ship's prow turned in the right direction itself that is causing the certainty in Carlyle that you will reach your goals. So you don't need to see results, you need to be oriented towards the right destination to get the results that you will not see with your eyes for a long time. So interesting. So interesting. Carlyle, I think, is making a case against hope in favor of certainty and in favor of a certain direction without needing to be affirmed by society, and society in all kinds of ways. So you don't need to see the results of your actions. In some way, Carlyle is writing in this time, like in newspapers, without knowing who's reading him, right? He's orienting himself in the right direction without getting the feedback, certainly not from 150 years later or almost 200 years later, knowing that his words are still being read. He's not getting that kind of feedback. He's not getting the kind of feedback from reality. He just knows he's pointed in the right direction and taking steps towards it. Just like a ship that is following the lodestar and the North Star, it's not getting feedback from its environment that it is going in the right direction, right? It's all everywhere. I love, actually, now that I think about it, the metaphor of the ship is very fruitful, because a ship that is pointed in the right direction or the wrong direction, either way, does not get any feedback from its environment. It's all the sea in the end, right? It's all blue ocean as far as the eye can see in the end. The only thing that is guiding the ship is the star. When it's pointed towards the star, towards its lodestar, when the ship's prow is pointed in the right direction, once you put time to it, the results come far later. You will see the land much, much later, as it is, as with the ship, as with the path towards a heroic spirit in the present. I love Carlyle. It is such a bountiful prose. Amazing, just amazing. Okay, we'll go to our last sentence. So I'll keep reading here because the sentence was not finished. He's saying, let no editor hope such things, no, and yet let all editors aim towards such things, and even towards such alone. One knows not what the meaning of editing and writing is, if even this be not it. So the meaning of this part is, to inspire heroism and wisdom in men, I will showcase past examples. That's what he's going to say in the next paragraph. But before this, like Carlyle is saying, that is the true meaning of editing and writing. So Carlyle is saying, in a sense, imploring all writers, all intellectuals, all those with the public influence, he's saying, the purpose, the meaning of editing and writing, it has to be towards orienting the society towards a heroic spirit. That is the goal that you should be aiming towards. That is your lodestar. That is everybody's lodestar, including our lodestar as writers. Enough to the present editor, so to Carlyle, it has seemed possible some glimmering of light, for here and there a human soul might lie in these confused paper masses now entrusted to him, wherefore he determines to edit the same. Out of old books, new writings, and much meditation, not of yesterday, he will endeavor to select a thing or two, and from the past, in a circuitous way, illustrate the present and the future. The past is a dim, dubitable fact. The future, too, is one, only dimmer. Nay, properly, it is the same fact in new dress and development. For the present holds in it both the whole past and the whole future. As the life tree Yggdrasil, wide-waving, many-toned, has its roots down deep in the death kingdoms, among the oldest dead dust of men, and with its boughs reaches always beyond the stars, and in all times and places is one and the same life tree. So, first of all, I say this is the end of the chapter, as well as the end of book 1, in past and present. And the book 2, where will basically, my understanding of it, I haven't read those yet, but my understanding is he's preparing us for book 2, where Carlyle is going to illustrate his points with a bunch of examples from the past. That's why he says he will endeavor to, he being Carlyle. Carlyle will endeavor to select a thing or two from the past and illustrate the present and future. In a way, Carlyle is a historian, but he's not, he's doing, this is such a beautiful way of being a historian, where it's not a mere explanation of what others did in the past, but also selecting the right examples of the past to help us in the present and in our future. It's a very didactic historianism, And I love that. I'm looking forward to reading that. So here I thought, at the time that I write this, I just thought, Carlyle might actually not even be convinced himself, but I kind of take it back with this enough. He's like, what is enough? I think what is enough is this Carlyle versus Carlyle, his pessimism and realism against his eternal optimism. And I thought when I first read it, or first thought about these passages, that Carlyle is just not enough convinced himself, so he just wants to shut that line of questioning in order to just move on. But I think he is actually convinced himself. I think I am convinced of Carlyle, certainly, that the road, of 1,000 miles does begin with the first step, and that once you've taken the first step, you will get to the 1,000th mile. So I think this enough doesn't have as much of the initial pessimism as I thought it had. And then Carlyle says these two sentences, which I found very interesting. First of all, to define a term, life tree Yggdrasil is an immense and central sacred tree in Norse cosmology. All around it exists all else, including the 9 worlds. So Carlyle is kind of, it made me think that, is he rejecting a linear notion of time? Because he's saying, he's analogizing the past and present and future to a tree, which is, we're drawing from the roots of the past, we are in the present, and we're reaching towards the future. Tree is just a very interesting analogy for time. It also, as I look at this image, which is a classic sort of image of Yggdrasil, it kind of implies there are many pasts and many futures, and the present is almost just by the shape of it a bottleneck. Or it is where, if you feel like they're being nourished, everything is concentrated. The present is like a concentrated form of the past and present, and it is the connection from the past to the future. It's very interesting. And then there's this sentence that I didn't quite understand. I mean, the image does make me understand it a little bit better, but he says, the past is a dim, indubitable fact. The future too is one, only dimmer. Nay, properly, it is the same fact in new dress and development. The idea that the past and future is the same in new dress and development, maybe it's interesting because Carlyle does say, the heroic spirit has to be cultivated in all times, across all epochs, everywhere. And like you can do it well or ill in all these dimensions. So there is a certain equivalency. It's almost like Carlyle, when he says same fact in new dress and development, he's saying that these are matters of the stomach and of technology. He's almost like sidelining them, saying new inventions, new material things that we might have, new technologies. Carlyle is saying those are kind of besides the point. Like, that's not the real thing. Because if it were the real thing, then of course it would matter that new dress and development, that the future and the present has new dress and development compared to the past. But he's saying it's not the important thing. So the important thing are the matters of the soul that are not changing. They're not changing from the past to the present to the future. They're the same thing. And therefore, in a way, the past and the future are two the same. And I think this is making the case why a sort of a logical case for why the examples he's going to give from the past are going to be as relevant as they are to our future. He's almost like nipping a particular objection in the bud, which is that, oh, but we have iPhones now. Like whatever examples he's going to give, and of course he's in his time, it wouldn't be the iPhone, but it would be something like the industrial, I don't know, steam engine or something. He's going to say, heed my words, even though those people did not have steam engines, and even though now in the future, compared to Carlyle, we have iPhones and the internet. Those are new dress and developments, but the facts, the same facts will apply as it did then. And of course, with the tree analogy, you can see, and I never quite thought of it like this, but like the branches kind of look like the roots. So they are same in a way. Okay, this probably was my longest reading ever, but very meditative on this chapter of Carlyle's Past and Present, Book 1, Chapter 6, Hero Worship.